Yeah, especially with nationally, we have a handful of competitors that you're going to see but most of them are all free. With small business, I
I'm surprised. I saw you extend presentation. No.
Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of yeah. Well, we got my house this question. So no matter what you do, as you're going to spend 10 hours at least on with a small startup and having that information flow, your hourly rates are going to outweigh R&D costs. And that's conservative. Oh gosh, it's the learning curve. But, they do want it. They're like, oh, this is the same. Okay, we did 10 hours. That's hundreds of hours. Yeah.
Just to learn.
Right flag.
I'm ready.
So I'm not real formal on this. I've been to so many meetings, and I get talking about the person introduces the speaker, and then the speaker gets it the way they want it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I just because you're going to do much better than it is. So what are you going to do with them this week?
I know, it's wild. The one thing that I'm going to is thinking of my first having a first birthday party for your dog. I'm like really into dogs lately, I swear. I don't know how to say this. But it's so cute. It's a big Labrador. So what we're doing is we live in Highland downtown. I live on Green Street, and we have a big dog park in the back of our complex. And so they're doing those big like play pools, and everyone has dogs. It's how this half my friends. So they're having a good little get together, and then like the humans are just hang out and barbecue.
So, big house. I'm really happy with the last 2 years. And I actually got a check, after even though I had dropped 600 grand when I was in the business. Right now, I've been doing this for 35 years. Commercial buildings.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Everybody has I'm serious.
Yeah, there's a lot of yeah, they have that as well. I have a lot of couple of young, newly married couples in my building, and they all not ready to have kids yet. They're all still working. They're so rushed, and they're like, oh, let's get it off.
And my son was then it was my and then he wanted it.
Yeah.
So now he's got a dog and a cat. They smell like this. Girlfriend of 3 years.
Right? Yeah.
All right, we're going to get this thing up and moving. If you can take a seat. All right, well, welcome and thank you for coming. We have a great topic tonight, and a topic that a lot of people don't talk about because it's kind of the furthest thing in the back of their head. And it actually should be one of the things that you think about when you're starting a startup, because it can help fund your business, it can help bring investors in. And so I'm not going to do much more talking. I'm just going to get the speakers up here. And they, as you know me, I let them do their own introductions. We're going to get for those who haven't been here before, we do questions and answers after the presentation. Open questions for big topics. If you have a specific question that's just for you and your business, save it for afterwards and come up and talk to them afterwards. So thank you very much, and come on up.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here. We really appreciate you spending your evening with us. My name is Ari Palmer. I am the Business Development Director for Indago Tax. We are specifically an R&D Tax Credit company. It's all that we do each and every day. Essentially, we work as an extension. I'm just gonna get this mirrored so you can see. We work as an extension of a CPA service offerings or an accounting department because it is a very specialized incentive. I'm originally from California, but loving being in Texas. I was just talking to these gentlemen. The only two bad things are the heat and the bugs, but I won't hold it against you. You guys have a lot of tacos here, so I like it. But we just recently moved our headquarters out to Austin. We're in San Francisco and Newport Beach, California. But we moved to Austin so that we could be more centrally located for our clients nationwide. Because our CPAs have been fantastic business partners. They refer us clients all over the country, wherever they have clients. So we have a lot of clients up in the Mid-Atlantic. I just got back from DC today. In the Mid-Atlantic area, a lot of technology there throughout the oh, this is interesting. Okay, it just looks weird on my computer. In the Midwest, down south, and the West Coast. And we're really excited to be here and sharing information with you tonight. One, because it's something that not a lot of startups know about. So one of the biggest things that we do within our organization is just educate tech companies on what might be available to them. And then two, we're about to release a new application that's going to be the first of its kind and going to be a much easier way to claim credit. So we're going to go over a bunch of things tonight. I know we're going to save the questions to the end, but please, if you have anything that you want to ask us, like Drew mentioned, about your business, we're really happy to go over anything with you. There's no wrong questions, and we do assessments all day long for free. So, oh, and this is Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm the R&D Tax Manager at Indago, and I've worked in the industry for about 3 years now. So I actually work on the actual studies once they come in-house, and Ari works her magic and educates people about them.
Hey. So we think we have the best jobs because I get to talk to tech companies all day long and hear about what they're doing and what they're tinkering on and what they might be, coming up with. And then Jenny actually gets to do a deep dive into the projects and qualify how these startups are meeting the R&D credit code. So we're just exposed to technology all the time. So I'm so excited. One of the things I know that I want to ask you guys are what kinds of projects you guys are working on. So would love if you could share those things with us during the Q&A too. So Just real quick again, we're a full service R&D tax credit service provider. We've been around for 30 years. It's kind of neat to be part of an organization that's mature, but we're kind of like a startup now because we have a new application that's coming out and we meet with startups. So we're making tax credits fun. And then we, as you can tell, we're a mix of different backgrounds. So I'm not a CPA. I work with CPAs all day long. I'm sales and marketing, but we have CPAs, attorneys, tax managers, industry engineers, and then we have client account teams and customer support. Oops. I guess I kind of like skipped right over. Yeah, we already work with CPA firms. Okay, so this is one of the biggest questions we get from a startup. Why haven't I heard about this? And also, why hasn't my CPA told me about this? So before you go and kick your CPA to the curb, if you even have one, it's not their fault. There's so many different nuances of the tax code. The R&D credit has actually been something that's been around since 1981. It's evolved since then. It was something that was continually extended, but it's niche. The tax code's complex. So if a CPA didn't maybe get training at one of the bigger four public accounting firms that they worked for, or they weren't trained by maybe their regional firm, or a service provider like Indago didn't come and present to them, there's a good chance they're not going to know, or they might know what it is, but they don't know how to do it. So we always say, wait, your CPA is the hero. They handle so many other business items for a company all year long. So we just handle this one item that goes on the tax return. And then going off that as well, CPAs really like us because depending on the size of the company, it can take several hours, meaning probably 10 to 20 at the very, very minimum for a small company, all the way up to several hundred hours for a large company. So something that a CPA feels comfortable with having a team that just specializes in this one thing to manage the entire process for them and their client. And then what our work product looks like is it's valuable calculations that are included for filing on your corporate or shareholder returns, depending on how you're structured, and then comprehensive reporting, substantiating how the credits and your activities meet IRS code. That's very, very important because you are, getting credits. The IRS doesn't always like that people, take money. So if you were to ever be reviewed, it's just always good to have all of that information preloaded. We kind of consider it like an insurance package, if you will. So if you get flagged for a review, you're all set up. So it's our mission to assist U.S. companies to quantify the value of the R&D tax incentive and complete their long-term budgeting goals with confidence. We are very steadfast in helping American businesses. And then ultimately today, it's just all about the R&D credit. It's been around for 36 years. And what's crazy about it is everyone wants to know, what exactly is the type of company that qualifies? And I don't have that answer for you today because it really is a neat thing because it applies to any innovative company that's developing or more closely improving upon a product, a process, a software, a technique, a function, a formula. That's really the key, is improving upon, because you might not be working on something that's necessarily new to the world, but it's new to you, and you're seeing some kind of problem, you're creating some kind of solution, and you as a taxpayer essentially are at risk for all of your successes and your failures. We're going to show you a little video. I know some of the gentlemen up front got a peek, and last week, and it gets a little punny, so just be prepared. How did I get it?
Full screen.
Let me escape this. Oh, it's stuck on the slideshow on mine. Let's just end this real quick. Bear with us. And we'll go into full screen.
We Research and development tax credits, or R&D, are a valuable tax benefit for companies that are developing or substantially improving their products, process, or services. Think of it this way. These credits are our government's way of rewarding your innovative business that can be used to reduce your company's tax liabilities, or as cash to increase your bottom line and market value. And the timing couldn't be better. As of 2016, the R&D credit is now permanent, making it that much easier for eligible companies to benefit. Now, companies of all sizes can take advantage of the program and utilize the credits as a reduction in federal or state tax liability or as a payroll tax FICA offset. Indago has simplified the claiming of these credits, and there's no hidden cost to assess your company's benefit. With our RAD app, it's quicker and more affordable than ever to begin reaping the rewards for your business. To see how you can unleash your savings potential, visit us online today. It's free and only takes a minute.
I forgot that I put that one in. There's another one with dogs. You'll be thrilled. All right.
Many startups fail to claim the valuable R&D tax credit relief that they are entitled to.
It just wants to play everything for you. Okay. Where is this? Side show? Oh, play from correct side. Okay, awesome. So one of the things it touched on just now is that the R&D credit is permanent. So it has been around for 36 years, but it wasn't until the end of 2015 until it became permanent. It was something that just kept being extended every couple of years. So it was somewhat hard for companies to tax plan around that because they weren't sure necessarily how long it was going to be around for. We would always say there's too many big businesses in this country that take advantage of it, but we were really happy we got bipartisan support, and it's now permanent. So finally, when you're thinking about certain investments that you want to make, you're going to have that confidence that this code's going to be rewarding you later on, no matter what timing you're in. So as part of the permanency, and one thing we're really narrowing in on today, and please come talk to us later if you are a more mature business or have interest in mature companies, because there's a different way to recoup some of the savings. But really today we're talking about the enhancement for startups in particular. For permanency, they put in a really great clause for startups because startups, highly technical companies, have always been eligible for the credit, but they could only apply those credits towards taxable income or their profits. And we know, unfortunately, that startups don't make a lot of money right away. So now you're going to more meaningfully be able to apply the credits towards your FICA taxes. So that's something, if you have W-2 employees, it's something you are paying regardless. So if you have $100,000 that you're paying an employee or total for your payroll, you're going to be spending about $6,200 no matter what on employer FICA taxes. That same $100,000, if that all qualified for R&D credits, in your first year of operations, you could get 6% of that back, so $6,000. So that's going to be almost a complete offset just on that $100,000 and that $6,200 tax. And then you can get up to, essentially, depending on the length of your business, year 1 to 5, about maxing out about 10%. And then I'll let Jenny get into how the expenditures work.
Great. So as Ari was mentioning, one of the things that's so beautiful about this credit is it can fit into the mold of your company. So anytime you guys are developing a new product or process or formula, and you guys run into kinks along the way, we want to recoup the expenses for the wages that were paid out to those employees who were working on that troubleshooting. So that being said, regardless of whether or not your company is eligible for the FICA offset, or you're a more matured company and you're taking advantage of the actual credit itself in a consultancy role, we capture 3 buckets of cost towards the credit as promulgated in the code. The first of which is employee time that's spent, and that is the credit driver among most of the companies that we work with. Essentially what we do is we look at your payroll, we look at the types of employees that you employ, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and based on that, we're able to ascertain a portion of that wage that we can recoup towards the credit. So, if you have 5 engineers on staff or 5 individuals who are really working to hone and perfect that product, and they're spending 100% of their time doing that, we can recoup their entire wage towards the credit. So that allows you, once you claim the credit, to go in and hire more employees that will additionally be working on that improvement throughout. The second bucket of costs that the code allows us to take a look at is outside contractors that are domestic based. So if you guys have a need for your product or process and you don't have the wherewithal within your company to create a solution for it and you have to contract out, we can take a portion of that expense as well. And then lastly, one of the more rare expenses that we're able to recoup depending on the type of industry that you work in or the company that you're with is supplies. And that's going to be any materials that are consumed in the R&D process. For example, if you were working on a product improvement for a prototypical design, you just didn't have the design ramifications hammered out quite yet, and you were going through and making several prototypes, and throughout that wasting a lot of money on material expenses to perfect that. We're able to recoup a portion of that as well.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so two questions. So for contractors, they have to be domestic, but what happens if they work overseas but they're part of a U.S. entity? So that's the first question. Would that be, could you write that off? And then two, with regards to the supplies, does that also, like for the production, does that only pertain to U.S.-based entities, or does that also apply to Mexico or China?
So that's a great question, and one that actually comes up quite often. With regards to the designation of the contractor that you're working with, if they are technically US based, but the work that they're doing is performed overseas, we're not able to take a look at it. It looks at the activity itself as far as what we can recoup. And the same goes for the supply expenditures. So those would be questions that were asked throughout. The credit is an American incentive in order to help grow our economy and actually encourage domestic production. But definitely we take a look at every single company and try and recoup every single dollar that we can. So, and it's okay if your company outsources some of that as an expense and does some of it domestically based. We take a deep dive to make sure that we're capturing everything that we can for you guys.
Yeah, and most typically it's going to be those individuals that are overseeing the international production for the supplies, which you can capture the most costs.
And same goes for the contractors as well. If you have somebody that you've hired overseas, but there's somebody domestically based that's working with them via email, having conversations about where the prototype is, that's time out of their wage that we can capture as well.
Great question. Really big question that we've gotten lately. Oh, these checks are kind of all over the place. That's okay. It got moved. Do you want to go on this?
Sure. So there's several ways for us to go about substantiating the expenditures that we're going to qualify. As I mentioned, primarily the number one driver of the credit that we see is wage driven. So obviously whenever things are in the conceptual phases, all the way throughout the product development itself, the employees are really going to be the force that's driving that forward. So as a starting point, we have to identify, in order to qualify whatever the activity is towards the credit, what it is that you're working on. So that's this flow chart that you see here with the business component, and that can differ depending on what your company does. So one that we've been seeing here recently a lot, working with a lot of startups, is going to be software.
This is the hardware group, so we're like your products.
Right, exactly. But that's
Your
one thing.
inventions.
That's another thing that Ari and I always run into is, we have companies that come to us and say, I don't do R&D. Like, I don't have a scientist working in a lab with a coat. Like, we don't do anything like that. We just, build buildings, or we just build hardware components. A lot of that contains highly qualified activity because, as Ari mentioned, the product, process, formula, invention, software, technique just has to be new to you as a taxpayer. So if you're working on a component or a product that may have been in existence, may have been a catalog item that you guys have worked on over the years, and you're just tweaking it, fine-tuning it, changing the criteria around so that it can meet that client specifications, all the time that goes into troubleshooting that and making sure that the components talk to each other and that you're really deriving that design for the customer as they specify to you is time that we can take a look at. So those are the questions that we ask preliminarily to ascertain what you're doing as a company. And then we're guided by a 4-part test, which I won't bore you with the details that are laid out in the code. But essentially, what the 4-part test gets at is, can we do it? How are we going to do it? And what's it going to look like? So that process that you go through as a company whenever you're trying to decide how to best attack a new product that you're working on.
That's the best 4-part test example I've ever heard. A CPA will not tell it to you like that. And then, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Just wanted to give you guys, I know a lot of people like to have examples, and as Ari mentioned, everybody wants to know, what am I doing that qualifies? And, one of the most aggravating things for me to hear, but I understand it completely, is, there is no way that I can really hammer down what it is that you're doing that's qualified. I can't give you an example. And while that holds some truth, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of high-level examples, and you guys can see how moldable that 4-part test is, and it was written like that on purpose so that we could reward all sorts of activities that are taking place through all sorts of industries and all sorts of product development. So as I mentioned, whenever you guys are in those initial conceptual phases, if you have employees that are having conversations and meetings about whether or not it's feasible for you to make a product, that's time we can qualify. Determining what the marketplace needs and then deriving a design from that is also time that we can qualify as well. As Ari mentioned before, it doesn't have to be new products only. If you guys have a catalog component or a hardware component that you've been working on for years and years, and then you just need to tweak one thing, but it has a domino effect, or you need to tweak several things, all the time that is spent really configuring out the different variations, looking at the different layouts, is also time that we can capture. And then, obviously developing a prototype is the obvious choice, what most people think is going to contain the most qualified activity. Anytime that you're spending really collaborating with other trades, if you're working within the confines of another structure or another component or product, you guys have to troubleshoot to make sure they can all talk to each other. That's time that we can also take a look at. So put some examples for you, example people. Any 3D printing, precision machining, developing sensors, receivers, electronic components, devices, looking at existing hardware components and asking yourself, how can I make this better? How can I achieve this end result or this user interface? All the things that you go through in your mind whenever you're trying to make your product and your company more competitive, the government rewards that with this credit for us to be able to capture that time for you guys.
Yeah.
So this sounds like what engineers do.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that engineers do that isn't in this category?
That's a great question. So
First engineer.
there are several exceptions to the rule. Engineers we find that they're highly qualified. Substantially all of their time typically qualifies for credit, but there are several areas. For example, at work, we like to believe that we're completely productive all the time and that we're working on new products all the time. But as you know, there's downtime. You guys may have some personnel management roles. You may have HR functions. You might have more streamlined roles where you're working on a repeat that you've done 1 million times and you're not uncertain as to how it's going to turn out. You put it in, you spit it out, it's turn and burn, and there's really no troubleshooting that goes into it. We back that time out.
Routine engineering.
Routine.
And reverse engineering.
And honestly, even reverse
engineering
engineering does have some qualifying activity because there are so many moving parts.
That's so true.
And the tax code essentially promulgates that you just have to be uncertain at the outset and engage in a process where you guys are evaluating what's the best option. I have option A, I have option B, I have option C. You look at all of them and then you decide what's the best way to go about it. But you're correct in saying that highly qualified engineers are highly qualified with regard to the time they spend.
Especially this group, because you're checking off all the boxes. We'll see like civil engineers, they don't highly qualify a lot of times if you were to choose like one engineer because they're working on more routine projects that they're skilled in doing. But hardware engineers, everything you're touching, it's gold.
Do you have a question in the back?
Yeah, 2 questions. What if your work is say entirely abstract, like you're deriving a new mathematical approach to solving a problem? Does that qualify?
That's also a great question. Absolutely, that qualifies. You don't have to be working on a product that's actually being sold yet. So that's what's so great about this credit, especially for new companies who are working on developing something that is going to be their breadwinner in the long run. There's a lot of work that goes in during those initial conceptual phases, and this credit rewards that. So if you have 2 or 3 of your guys working on it, we want to capture that time.
Yeah, and what if you're working on a trade secret where the product is not going to be, its development may not be ever released into a public venue like a patent would be? Is that type of activity?
Process-wise,
Yeah.
that?
So Ari brings up a good point. There's 2 ways for us to look at it, a product or a process. As far as what the business component is, that would be the process. Your employees are still spending time, regardless of whether or not that's proprietary or it's a trade secret, they're still spending time troubleshooting and ensuring that that product or whatever it is that they're going to release is going to meet that criteria and still using their expertise.
Yeah, we always like to ask about failed projects within an organization as well, because a lot of people don't want to talk about their failures, but we know that success comes from failures. So it's the true sign that you're going through trial and error, and you're going through a process of experimentation, and you're getting from where you thought you were going to start and where you are now. So we're always asking about failed projects because that's a certain amount of your time that you're spending on yourself or with your employees. So all those things that might not have worked out or unsuccessful attempts are times that could result in the credit as well.
So as hardware startup, we got a lot of, we buy, improve our product, buy hardware stuff, file it off as expenses. Would that, would that be better than this credit? Should we claim R&D instead of expenses? Or is that?
So that's a good question. That's something that we would want to take a look at in a deeper dive, because sometimes a CPA that's expensing something or depreciating something turns out to be beneficial as a deduction, and sometimes if it's allowable under the credit or categorizing it under as a credit, that could be more beneficial. So that's something we would do a cost benefit analysis on.
And they work hand in hand as far as your ability to maximize the benefit from a deduction standpoint or a credit standpoint. Obviously, we're biased and we think that credits are better because they're dollar for dollar. But even if you are, expensing or deducting some of those expenses, the materials that are being utilized, likely you're not deducting the expenses that you spend on your employees. And like I said, that really is the bread and butter of this credit, is going to be the wages that are paid out to the employees working on it.
Yeah, sometimes supplies can be immaterial, but once they get to a certain threshold, that's another part of why it's good to strategically tax plan and consider the R&D credit, because there might be that point where you might want to stop taking it as a deduction and take it as a credit if allowable. Really good question. So this is another big question that we get, because you guys are working on really fun things for all day long. You don't want to talk to accountants, you don't want to talk to tax credit people, but we want you to talk to us, and we're going to make it really easy for you when you ask us, what kind of information do I need to provide to complete a study? For startups, it's very simple. Well, we think it's simple because we get to do it every day, but year-end payroll summaries, your contractor expenses, your supply expenses. So something that we were talking about with the gentleman here earlier in the front is if you can start to just kind of keep a running record of what you're spending, it can be very simple through Excel. It's a great start. It's amazing how many companies we've seen in complete disarray and some people that have perfect record keeping. But really, just thinking about those 3 buckets makes it a lot easier for you on an ongoing basis to when you're ready to make a claim, to be able to just spit out, this is what we paid employees, this is what we paid contractors, this is what we paid in supplies. And then we go through the more technical area. So we look at your project list through the given year, and then if you have any technical documents. And one thing that Jenny specializes in is interviewing our clients and going through the 4-part test in the nice way. Can we do it? How can we do it? And then how do I go about processing a claim? Well, traditionally, it's something that's an exchange between a provider like Indago and someone from your staff, whether it's someone from your accounting department or operations, and then a technical personnel that can attest to the projects that are going on over the course of the year that's being analyzed. So it's usually 1 or 2 people at least, but it's information exchange. So a lot of emails, phone conferences, we do site visits, and it's something that it takes several weeks, maybe a couple of months. Our average study traditionally is 45 days or less. Compared to the competition, usually they're about 3 months or more. So they can get things done too fast, but we like to be in and out of your hair. But with startups, one of the biggest problems we had was the cost and the time could outweigh the benefit of the credit, both for you as a startup and a growing business and for us as a consultancy, because we have really talented professionals on staff that are meeting the code in its entirety, and it takes a good amount of time. So we had to start turning down small businesses, but we don't want to turn down anyone, especially our favorite startups. So we came up with a solution to this, and that is the RAD app.
Many startups fail to claim the valuable R&D tax credit relief that they are entitled to. The reason? Cost and time restraints for an R&D study. That's where we come in. Indago is the first R&D tax credit application designed specifically for startups. Not only are we experts in fetching those R&D dollars, we have made the process easier than ever before. At Indago, we walk our clients through R&D claims preparation from the comfort of their computer, whereas a traditional study may take upwards of a couple months, nearly half a decade in dog years. The RAD app allows customers to prepare a claim at their own pace, with the average claim taking only a few hours' time. And we don't stop there. When our customer is ready to submit their claim, the Indago team will work like a dog to review for accuracy, prepare reports, and deliver credit within days. Truly a startup's best friend. Best of all, we have no doggone hidden costs. You'll know exactly what you're paying before you start. Awesome! To see how you can unleash your savings potential, visit us online today. It's free and only takes a minute.
How possum is that video, am I right? Great. So something I'm really excited to share with you tonight is just a couple of clips from our app. So not a lot of people have seen this, but our anticipated launch date is August 1st. So it's going to be the first plug-and-play interface for startups to go in when you're ready to submit a claim. Depending on the size of company you are, and by size we're just talking about qualified research expenditures, we know that there's a direct correlation between project amount and how much we have to analyze by the amount of spend that you have. We're going to have a flat fee pricing model, and I'll go into that in a minute. But like the video mentioned, it's only going to take a few hours time, which is a game changer. When you're ready at the really any time of the year now, you have until December 31st of this year to claim tax year 2016. But if you're not ready for 16 or you're just starting now, you could do the end of the year for 2017 and start getting those credits. So we've made a really simplified interface so that you're entering the pertinent business information that we need from you, entering your payroll information, and then most importantly your annual R&D projects. We built in, so you can kind of see, really simple, kind of like a TurboTax in a way, to enter your info, and it guides you throughout. So we love our dog, Indago. Within our application, he's actually created his own app that allows you to snap a selfie and have your dog put your face placed on a dog bone. There's lots of examples throughout. We've really skillfully, our tax professionals, our CPAs and engineers and attorneys have really tried to make the tax guidelines a lot more reasonable and attainable for companies, because that's something that companies will often get hung up on, is just how dense the code can be. So he works with you throughout the app. He's working on his own claim. So on every single slide, there's like show me an example if you need any definitions or actual examples of what his project looks like throughout, which we've found to be quite helpful. So again, just really easy formatting. You can drag and drop your payroll and your payroll summaries, and it'll tell you if you're missing something. Once you've gone through all your projects, your payroll business, you submit your claim, and then our agents are going to review for accuracy. So that's one of the most important things is with our app, we know, and we've seen some companies try to do project management and time tracking, or spit out some kind of credit just based on wages. We don't want to be that kind of company. We are going to review for accuracy. We have real people. We're going to call you if we need any clarifications. And then if all looks great, then we're going to send you a notification, and then you're going to easily be able to download your technical report, your calculations, and the forms that you would take to your accountant or payroll provider. So just making it really, really simple for you. So what does it cost? So I don't have the exact numbers on here, but nothing to assess your opportunity. Time with us, asking us questions, running through numbers, that's completely complimentary. And going through, some of your activities, getting kind of a baseline for what you'd anticipate in credits, that's free. Once you decide, okay, I'm ready to submit my claim, we're gonna have a flat fee. It ranges from just under $2,000 as an entry level, all the way up to about $8,600. To give you kind of some perspective, our highest point is less than half the amount that you see in the marketplace. So most providers will say we won't touch a claim for under $20,000. So we're really excited to be offering a solution. For companies with just a few $100,000 spend, they could get $6,000 to $30,000 for $2,000. So really excited about making this a lot more attainable for you guys. And then most importantly, when do I see my money back, right? So you've submitted the claim, you've paid us to process your claim. When do I get that return? So the credits have to be filed on an originally filed return, or you can amend. If your company's already filed your corporate return this year, you can amend until the end of the year to make sure that these credits can come on your payroll taxes. So the credits have to be reflected on your tax returns, and there's this new connecting form that just was created by the IRS. So that connects your tax return with your R&D credit form that goes along with your tax credit, or your tax return, to your quarterly 941s that you pay. So if you had filed in March and April, or our clients that did file in March and April, they're seeing their offset in July. So it's just the quarter right after. And they carry forward until they're exhausted. And you can get up to $250,000 a year. Do you want to do the key takeaways?
Sure. So Ari just went over several examples for you guys with regard to how you can benefit with the FICA offset. That's a more immediate benefit that you can realize regardless of your profitability. That's one of the main things that we run into all the time. Not only do we have companies who the larger companies won't touch because they're not generating those larger credits that Ari mentioned, we have individuals who aren't essentially turning a great profit or paying a lot of tax. And that's what's so great about the PATH Act is this study can be done for you guys in a matter of hours. And then regardless of the fact if you guys are paying tax or not, you're benefiting within the next month, or the next quarter. So definitely something that we're really excited to provide a solution for you guys. And it is a dollar for dollar incentive, meaning that you get to apply that directly against your tax liability if you do have liability, if you're going to claim the credit in the traditional methodology. So definitely one of the most worthwhile incentives that I've ever had the privilege of working with. I love to educate people about the credit because so many people don't know about it. And it really does allow you to reinvest and redistribute resources back into your company And I mean, essentially it's rewarding the activities that your employees are working on. And what better way is there to grow your business than to hire more eligible candidates to help you grow that business? So definitely a really exciting industry to be in, and we're definitely excited to work with you guys if you, which I'm sure you do just based on the questions that we got, are performing any of these activities.
Yeah. And lastly, it's your money. Take it. You know?
Yeah.
With Indago. Awesome. Do you guys have any questions?
I have a quick question. So,
Yeah.
in the software industry, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you're able to write off your supplies can be attributed to server infrastructure. So, for like Amazon Web Services.
Mhm.
My question is, if that's true, and we're receiving, and we have a credit pool already with Amazon, and we're spending about $5,000 a month on maintaining that server infrastructure, are we able to write that off despite that $5,000 being a credit within Amazon's credit pool? Does that make sense? So Amazon had awarded a bunch of credits. We use them up on a monthly basis, and those are attributed to costs. And I was just wondering, are we able to write those off even if we're not actually spending the physical dollar for it?
So let me ask you this:
Yeah.
what kind of supplies are you buying to generate those costs?
It's server costs, right? The AWS
Yeah,
server
they're
space.
server costs. Correct.
Yeah, it's server space. So yeah, they're already being credited for AWS, so that's likely not an expense that's going to qualify. We rarely see software supplies qualify. Like there was some supplies that some companies were taking through like computer leasing for a while, but that kind of got nixed. The only really kind of more material costs that you're going to see in the software space is going to be your costs associated with patents, if any. But we know with software too, that's kind of becoming more difficult with Alice Law and all of that. But if you can continue to write, those costs off and get a credit with them, something to just account for.
With respect to the patents, it would be for the initial expenses to create the patent, not.
And legal fees associated with them too. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's interesting. What about like software design tools, like SolidWorks, stuff like that, the license fees for that?
So generally, no, we can't capture that because the supply expenditure has to be related to the uncertainty of the prototype that you're working on. So essentially, that's what it all stems to, is the 4-part test that we're capturing the activities under. Every expense has to meet that.
But people working on SolidWorks, that time will work.
That's
Yeah.
essentially where you recoup it, right? Is
Yeah.
the individual that's working on it.
So it's
Yeah.
essentially hands-on time, hands-on effort,
Right.
and hands-on supply.
Right.
For research, in other words, finding out if something is possible, and
Right.
development, bringing that up to a point where everyone can say, yeah, okay, the concept works, right?
Sure.
Right. So
Like an example would be like with a 3D printer. I know a company that leased a series of different machines, but they were testing all different types of material.
Right.
The owner actually gave his wife an engagement ring that was 3D printed, which was awesome. That took a lot of effort
Right.
and a lot of time and supplies and materials that went into that. So he couldn't recoup the cost of the leasing of the machinery, even though it was integral in the development. But if he had purchased it and was manipulating the way that it was functioning, and that process and time, he definitely got to qualify, but not the actual cost that was associated with the license of the
Suppose
machine.
you're a company that is, I have company A here that has a legacy electronics design. And let's say our company makes modifications to that, who gets to claim the credit?
that's an excellent question. So there are several parameters that guide our analysis with regard to that. If you're using that design as a baseline and then you're modifying it, in the eyes of the tax code, that is a different design.
Right.
Now, having said that, you do have to perform an analysis of the contract between you and your client, if you have a contract between you and that other company, to determine who has rights to that. So it's a twofold analysis. We actually look at your contracts to determine whether or not whether payment is contingent upon the research, so whether you're going to get paid no matter what of success or failure, and then also whether or not you're maintaining substantial rights which that's a fancy way of saying that you can use the know-how that you worked on in future projects. And that's something that our attorneys on staff assess on a case-by-case basis to determine whether or not that's an eligible expense we can qualify.
But some of those questions are built in the app too.
That's true.
So you don't even have to, yeah.
For startup, some of us may not have payroll, very little payroll, mostly equity.
Sure.
How do we claim that with FICA?
Right, so you do have to have W-2H payroll to be able to use the credit to offset.
It has to be W-2, 1099.
Right, so we can generate credits from W-2 and 1099 and your supplies, but to be able to apply it to FICA offset, you have to have FICA liabilities.
But for the traditional credit, yes.
But for the tradition, yeah.
There's plenty of ways for us. So we can look at GMPs, we can look at SE income, we can look at 1099 expenditures, draws, we can look at W-2 expenses. So there's several different ways that we can slice it depending on your company's need. It's very tailored toward the company that we're working on. There's no one way that we conduct a study.
Speaking of 3D printer and 3D printing object, the time that pretty much applies to every time we print a 3D object. We don't know what's going to come out.
Sure, right. Sure. Yeah, you know, yeah.
Since I wake up, I don't know.
Yeah. You think it's going to look like a dog, but it ends up being a cat.
Right off.
You know?
So, I mean, that's a very excellent point. Although it's really hard to capture supply expenses in software, the beauty of it is we can flip and we can capture the time.
Yeah.
Which,
The time.
in some instances, might be more exhaustive than the cost of the actual components itself. So,
Yeah.
Do it all the time.
People are most expensive. Go for it.
So I currently work with a company and we're bumping up against our 5-year limit because I understand that this is only for companies that have been around for 5 years. My question is, because I hear conflicting things. Some people say it's 5 years since you make your first sale, which I don't know if it's true or not, so any clarification there would be beneficial.
Yeah.
And then also determining 5 years, like if we were an LLC and converted into a C Corp, I imagine it starts when we've converted into a C Corp, the timer starts, or has it been since the LLC?
so it would be since the LLC.
No.
And with regards to the FICA offset, I do believe that it's the date of incorporation. But with regard to that traditional credit calculation, it's the first time that there was R&D. So let's say you incorporated in 2000, but you weren't actually working, you were just developing the business, restructuring, doing all those things, and you weren't working on any sort of product development until 2003, that would be the year that you started.
Yeah, so that's a really good question because gross sales is not to be confused with gross receipts. So we're looking at when gross receipts occur, not gross sales. So gross receipts can be a ton of different ways that a company could be receiving money or income. So it's really off the gross receipts. So usually the baseline is incorporated. People are getting going within that year, but we do see all the time, like with 2012, a lot of companies, they started in 2012, but really they didn't start until 2013. So we can start from 13 on.
And if you are approaching that more matured phase of your business where you guys have been around for more than 5 years, you may be an excellent candidate for the consultancy side where you are applying the tax credit against your liability. And you can still, there's limitations on the payroll tax. There's really not very many limitations on the credit once you calculate that. So.
Right, yeah, there's no cap at the federal level for credit. So it's capped at $250 for payroll tax offset, but we have companies and clients that receive millions in credits every year. Yeah.
Does your app sync with QuickBooks or any other sort of accounting software?
Eventually it will, yes, you're going through all those fun APIs, getting those all in order. It's gonna take a while. But yeah, we're going to start, our first one will likely be an accounting software that we have a strategic partnership with in the fall, and then we'll hopefully roll out very quickly from that one. That one's just gonna be the first. Yeah, hopefully QuickBooks. Thanks. Awesome. Okay, great.
Looks like
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Really great questions. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Drew. We really appreciate it.
So if you need to get in touch with them, I'm sure they've got some cards
Yes,
for
we
you.
have business cards
Definitely.
we can pass. We'll pass
And
them out. Both of us.
we'll call it a night. Thank you very much. If you don't mind doing a quick cleanup of your space around you. And look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you guys
Drew.
for coming. Appreciate it.
Hi there. Yes, absolutely. Last time I brought my CEO's by accident. He was like, why are people calling me? I was like, don't you want everyone to call you?
Jenny, all right, good luck. I'll step
Hopefully everyone knows you.
Valley
For the next
scratches.
one.
Wait,
Hi, Constantine. How are you? Sure, good.
it's about the using international contractor.
Right.
So I know like for some of you stuff. Heading up on the last
What's your guys' quarter here? Have a factory or is it somewhere?
It's just right around the corner.
Most
Like
qualified, there's no company in the US that can do this work.
It's got a big red light in the middle, a big egg tree. You can't miss it. You walk by.
So I'm wondering if there's any.
So you're wondering about the contract between you and the consultant that you're working
Well,
with?
it's a consultant working on it, it's based on, or it's not a consultant, it's a contract.
Right.
I would argue, I could argue, I think that is the only, one of the only vendors in the world that isn't really independent in there that could do that. So, is that relevant?
Yes, unfortunately, there are very few things that this credit is very strict about, but keeping it domestic is, I mean, because it was enacted to kind of boost the economy. So they're pissed, of course, about that one.
Okay. Oh, and also, so I'm a little ignorant when it just comes to all this, but so I will be filing all these forms with my tax return next year.
Correct. Yes.
So it's not like something you can do, I guess it would be expensive. You can do it. So you just file it with your tax return and then supply over the course of the next year.
Exactly. So basically, it's a refund. It's just a check that you would get from the IRS, and it's one form. It's a 6765.
Oh, so I get one check back.
Yeah, you'll get the check back. It's a refund, so then you can redistribute it however you see fit in your business, and it literally is one piece of paper. You just slide it into your return, file it, and you're done with it. No problem. Hi.
That's pretty much all.
So you're developing a prototype, and is it just you, or are you guys actually doing your manufacturing on it?
We will be doing manufacturing, but first we have to prototypes, see how it works, and then probably more prototypes.
Absolutely.
So I just want to understand, so if it's 150,000 that we're spending in the prototype, like how much eventually we're going to get for the credits?
Right. So $150,000 is not what you're spending on the actual supplies that are in the materials that are going into the prototype. So the great news is, since you're working on that prototype and you're getting through all the kinks, we can capture all of that. Not only can we capture that, but we can capture your time that is spent developing that.
But we're not going to pay ourselves. Basically, time our pay because it's my pay from our pocket.
Right.
Like we're not going to have double duty employees. This is probably next year when kind of start.
Right. So when did you guys start? Okay, wow. So if we can take, let's say for argument's sake, that we can take all of your $1,000 towards the credit, then the maximum return that you're gonna get on that, since you're so new as a company, is gonna be 6% of that. So, right. And then it ramps up over time as, because obviously, ultimately the goal is to pay yourself. And when that happens, you guys will still be working on prototypical designs. We can combine the prototype expenses and your expenses, and then we can shake that out. And the more you mature as a company, the government rewards that too, because we actually have to look back historical base period 3 years. Since you don't have it, that's where that 6% comes in. Once you've been around for a little while, you can get as much as 10% of your expenditures.
we started a new company. Like there was another company that has all the IP. It's been around for 10 years, but nothing has been done.
Right.
It was just IP.
Right.
So now
When's the right
it's
time?
actually, we're starting to build.
No, really. Well, yeah, it really is. And, you know, most typically companies are looking about, or is.
But you guys reorganized
But
things.
I always
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
look a
and
little bit before,
original
like,
inventors
actually
came in,
explore
you
and
know,
cover your opportunity, just so that you know, because a lot of times we get calls like
Yep.
3 days before
IP
filing, we're like,
existed for 10 years, but
like,
it
we
was never
actually don't have enough time, you know? But
Yeah.
that opportunity is much more
Well,
possible.
the great news about the scenario that you just posed to me is obviously the entire credit is going to be encompassed by supply expenditure for now.
Exactly.
That will expand, but you're just working on that one prototype. So from our substantiation standpoint and us coming in and really ascertaining what you're doing, it's gonna be relatively easy for you because it's what you're doing all day.
yeah, that's all we're doing.
Right? So, I mean, you would get potentially $9,000 for very little work on your end.
But then on, say next year, when we're ramping it up and
So until you
spending
have
more,
either you're profitable and paying tax, I would say, you know, within that.
so what's the maximum, was it 10% maximum?
10% on the regular credit methodology. There's two ways for us to calculate it. And then if we're doing the alternative methodology, which just takes the one back in the prior years, you can, which you don't have quite yet, that returns a slightly greater credit in some instances, but you're never really going to get above 14% of your expenditures.
And so it starts from 6 and then next year, like when does it get to 10? Is it like next year or is it?
So it'll be after your first 3 years, because with your first 3 years, you'll take 6%. And then once you've gotten a little bit more matured and you've put in those 3 years, then we can maximize that up to 10% for you.
After 3 years. Okay. And then is there kind of limit as to, you know, when does it, 5 years, first 5 years or 10 years, like how long can you keep claiming it?
You can claim it every single year, and you can actually go back 3 years. Well, you wouldn't, but if you, any company was interested in doing so, they could. And it's an annual benefit.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
For spending your evening with us, I really appreciate it. Nice to meet you. You got recorded?
Yes.
Product and process.
Oh, yeah, so look at those.
Section 174 test.
Thanks for your questions
Yes, thank you,
tonight.
John.
Nice to meet you.
For
Yeah,
eliminating
we've got a lot of
uncertainty with respect to development or, you know, improvement development or improving
company
a
that
product. You use the term product specifically. So how does process get into the 174 test?
That's a good question. So actually, our analysis is governed not only by what section 174, but it's also governed by section 41. And it's incorporated by reference into 174. And essentially when they say product, that's what they're referring to as the business component. And the business component is an all-encompassing term that captures product, process, formula, invention, software technique. So all of those things, if you're improving upon any of those things within that business component, which is defined in the code, you can take advantage of it from there. So while it says product, it means everything that's a business component. And sections 174 really, I mean, it's multifaceted, but it really pertains to the supply expenditures and not as much the wage expenditures and the actual credit methodology.
So if you have like a list of questions you do for your deep dive to ask of people about their things, you say, well, I got this list of questions, but it's not that efficient, I need to rework my list of questions. I'm gonna do some process improvement work or research and development to eliminate the uncertainty as to the data I'm getting into deep dive from clients. Is that something you can say, well, this, we're not producing any hardware, this is the hardware crowd, so we're used to hardware, but can you say, I'm improving I'm producing a product in the form of my questions that I'm asking my clients?
So, unfortunately, it has to actually have the end goal of being something that's developed for the company. So, in that scenario that you just gave me, it would be hard, it would be difficult, because you're doing a process improvement, you're absolutely right, but it's more of a process improvement for efficiency as from a company standpoint, as far as how you guys operate as a business, not as far as how you operate as once you do get those clients in-house and you're developing a product for them, if that makes sense.
And then refile and then report that on your next.
Okay, so you're, I mean, I guess
guess it would depend, like in your question, if you go into, you say we've got different size, clients we're going out to ask us questions of, but if it's a startup, we're gonna have a one deep dive set of questions. If it's a big, mid-sized corporation, we're gonna have a different set. And then if you tailor them specifically to the needs of those, different entities that you're serving, does that? I'm trying to give you, your example that you're familiar with. She said you go in and do this deep dive and ask, you say, we don't make any products, all we do is calculate numbers to put on a tax return. But we do have a process that does that, and our process needs to be more efficient so that we can accurately capture every dollar that we need to put on this tax return. Is that, what is it, it sounds like you're saying you can't, for your own sake, if you modify what your approach to doing the deep dive to get the data from the client, that you can't say, okay, that's a product improvement qualified.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out what it is that makes that, if processes can be covered, why can't your process be covered?
So process would be covered in the instance that you're engineering a software component, in an example, for one of your clients, right? Or a hardware component, let's use that. You're going in and you have an idea of what they want, they give you a criteria, and you don't know yet how to make it, but you have to go through process improvements on the existing product that you do have in order to derive a product that will be acceptable to them. That's what we're talking about. Let's say you're doing market research and you know that there's a high demand for XYZ hardware component, but no one's doing it yet. And no clients ask you to do it, you just know that it's necessary in the future. So you take it upon yourself to head up a department in your firm and say, look guys, I can foresee that this is gonna be something that's necessary and that it's needed in the marketplace. Let's perfect a product and let's go through it and try several different iterations. There's no end user yet, and we're not selling it to anyone yet. But we're constantly improving the process for the product that we may ultimately use. So more of an internal project versus an internal process to help the business flow more effectively. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I guess to put it back in your context of what you do, let's say you had, you were just serving startups and you got this whole mid-size, maybe big corporations have this whole, their in-house stuff that deals with all this and stuff, but there's sort of a group of mid-level corporations that aren't getting all the R&D credits they can get. And you say, we're gonna take and re-engineer our process to meet that customer's needs in that marketplace. That's still not.
Actually, that's a really good point you bring up, because it's very rare for a consultancy firm such as us to do anything like that. With the Rad app that you just saw, where we developed basically a product that's not on the market. Nobody has it. Nobody will touch a study unless they're going to get paid $10,000. So Ari was like, you know what? We don't like turning business away. So how are we going to come up with a methodology so we can have these credits calculated for small business? So she developed this application, and she worked with an outside consultant to get everything that we needed. She worked with me to make sure that all the legal parameters were covered, and we developed the software that we're about to launch on August 1st. We're actually going to claim an R&D credit for that time.
That was sort of the essence of my question. And in that case, you got the actual software. I mean, you could make the argument there's uncertainty. Oh, I could click on the app and it wouldn't launch, so there's uncertainty.
It's a risky endeavor, you know?
I mean, if it's not in the form of software, if it was just, essentially you were previously doing the same thing in a non-app thing by just going in and asking questions and collecting data. If it's merely that sort of pencil and paper type process, does that somehow make it not eligible?
So it wouldn't be eligible from our standpoint as far as like a consultancy firm that's improving their processes, but if you're an engineering firm and you never actually deliver a product and you're just redlining drawings and it's on a paper trail, that would qualify as a product. But I've been in the industry for a really long time, and I've never seen consultancy firms like us eligible to claim a credit. And if you would have told me that 6 months ago before we started developing this, I would have walked in your face and said it's not possible. But I mean, as you mentioned, it's very risky. There's so much uncertainty throughout the whole process because it's never been done before, and we have to, figure out how are we going to get the legal parameters represented in the app, how are we going to get all the technical data from the company in the app, and work with an outside consultant, programmers. So, definitely there's risk in that, and definitely, I think Ari jokes all the time that we get to reduce a portion of her salary next year
defensive approach that it's sort of like, well, there's not really anything to go wrong, we just ask a question, we get an answer, and there's not the uncertainty of it having to categorize everything and put it in the app.
So definitely it's easier to substantiate if there's an end product, for sure.
Okay.
But that being said, like companies shouldn't shy away just because they haven't gotten it off paper yet. Because there's still a lot of thought that goes into that initial. Think about this building. How many times do you think it had to be drawn before they could even hit the ground running? You know, there's so many factors that go into it. You work with there's not one. I mean, there's an owner that's hired that has the conceptual idea. They have to hire a general contractor. They have to hire subcontractors that are experts in all the different trades that they're not experts in. They all have to work together to collaborate to get one idea on paper that has every configuration from all of the subcontractors, the owner, the general contractor. So, as you can imagine, like, to put up a building of this stature, that's going to take a lot of time. And that's what this credit was generated to reward, is the time that's spent redlining drawings, looking at different layouts, asking themselves, is this going to work, is that going to work, and just going back and forth.
Okay. Because I'm asking all these questions from a couple of different perspectives, because there are a couple of different things that bring me here. One thing I developed this device to help the blind navigate by echolocation, and so I've built some prototypes and so on. I'm working on some more quantity parts to build new prototypes and so on. So, and I would assume in that case, even though supplies are hard to capture, I mean, if I buy 680 ohm resistors, it's like, you know, it's not, it's kind of specific, almost disposable thing that can't, you know, is there any challenge to capturing those supplies at that kind of
No, so that would be considered under section 174, good reading, that would be considered scrap. So we can take a portion of that is a result of a failed prototype. Obviously, there's several hundred limits to what we can take from a supply perspective. It's a convoluted bucket of cost, but I mean, I've been working in the industry forever, so I can tell you right off the cuff if it's going to qualify or if it's going to not. The hardest part is really parsing out, you know, what of this is on a go-forward basis versus what did I have to, you know, I had to eat that cost, essentially.
And then, so yeah, part of this is aimed towards a very specific project. There's, you know, time and materials going into the prototypes and the testing and so on. But then on my day job as a patent attorney, so I do, you know, just we're branching out into other areas. Like I was doing an IP due diligence study, and I've never done that before. So it's like, well, geez, if I have to come up with a methodology for processing all of this information related to this intellectual property, I'm not producing a app that's going to be for it. But,
I see where you're coming from now.
So that's kind of, I put it in your context because until you came up with the app, you're sort of in the same process, go in and get the information from the client and process it and say, here's your result. It's like I get the information, write it up, should give them a patent application.
Isn't it crazy how much time we spend doing things like that to improve the process of what we're going to do later? It's amazing. They need to come up with an incentive for that.
Well, that's what's interesting to me is, I mean, well, it sort of goes back to something, one of the guys I worked with right out of law school said his family was in business of making coffee and tea and malt shake, make some stuff. So he said, we got everything taken care of for some years, and there's still some guy right there, the stuff in the bag, in the box, putting it in the truck, and off it goes and makes, money. But he said, now that we're doing this, billable hours, if we're not seeing your bill, we're not making it done. So it's, kind of, it would be nice to come up with like an app that writes patent applications for me, but the thing about in this case, you can sort of categorize and say, what are you guys using your time for? And it's whether it's one employee working on one project or some employee at some other company working on some completely different project. It's sort of at high level of meaning looks about the same. Whereas all the stuff I'm doing, it has to be something nobody's ever invented before, so it has a uniqueness to it.
Absolutely. If you're working in patents, then there's really no way around that. So you're going to have any sort of routine, fast-paced, like let's just get this turned in for every time.
So I tell people, if I walk into a meeting with you and you don't tell me something else on the planet has ever heard before, then we're probably both wasting our time because you need to have invented something.
Absolutely. especially in the industry that you work in.
Yeah,
But, I mean, you work with a lot of people that definitely qualify for the credit if they're working on patents.
But if I just say I'm gonna come up with a way to do IP due diligence studies or something like that, if I'm, to me, it's like a product when I write a letter to the client, say, here's your thing that says go ahead and, buy this company, they've got a patent that seems to be valid or something. But, from the perspective of the tests that are involved here, it sounds like that might not be quite the product.
I don't think, I'm a really big proponent of making everything qualify that I can.
Yeah.
I'm an attorney too, so I want to bend that gray area, but, I mean, in that regard, you could argue that you were working on a product, which would be that paperwork that you're generating. You could argue even that you were uncertain as to, how that product was gonna turn out, but I think what gets you is the technological nature and the process of experimentation. Because guess what, you've been doing IP patents for X number of years, you're an expert on it, so how uncertain are you really that you can generate a report that's gonna guide someone through how they can efficiently, you know what I mean?
Right, and like your app, then it has the technological in nature, you can say, check the box, yes.
Computer science, boom.
Computer science, it's, we're not quite sure if all the, code will run right, so it's a little uncertain, and then you've got a product that actually meets the test and so on, so.
But definitely the prototype that you're working on, 100%, you could probably capture your time as well as any expenditures that were going into that as well.
Okay, great. So but then I need to be sort of formally paying myself to, have.
Yeah, you need to be a company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, isn't that the worst?
You can get away from those billable hours forever.
Right.
Yeah, start your own company.
I'm having lunch with someone tomorrow to work on further, as, I was telling your patent attorney by day, but
Oh, great.
So most of the time, my clients come to me and they've got great ideas, and
Yeah.
I just do work for them and send them a bill, and it's, life's good, but it's, every once in a while I come up with an idea that's, sort of, I can't throw away until this thing to help the blind navigate with echolocation is, thing. It was interesting too, because when you file patent applications, almost always the patent examiner wants to look like they're doing their job, so they send you a rejection, so you didn't invent anything. But in this case, it was, I got a first action allowance on my first application, so I broadened the claims. Then I got a first action allowance on the continuation application.
Oh my gosh,
It was like,
there you go.
You just said, here, you get a patent, because it was completely different than everybody else. I did a prior art search, and it was like, no, everybody else does stuff differently, so. So anyway, that's why I come to the hardware meetup to get people who know how to put, take products from a conceptual prototype level into production. So. And Drew's done some great.
I would think that there'd be a lot of excellent people. I think at the last meeting there was a few people who specialized in that too.
Yeah, some folks who were doing like the circuit boards and all that, where it's like, that could really save me. I mean, it's like it's a more expensive component, but it could basically simplify all of production.
And they're contractor costs for you.
So,
for your newly
He has
formed
to buy
LLC.
contractors, and then once he starts paying himself, he's gonna have wages too.
Yeah. I gotta stop buying those resistors on eBay for 100 for 79 cents, including shipping from China, and start buying real products that I can take advantage of all these expenses. And, it's been sort of, usually takes about a month to get the stuff from China, but it's like, I'll do the day job while the parts come in.
You're not in a super big hurry.
But if I ramp this thing up, then we can.
Yeah, you're planning ahead. It's great.
I love hearing about those things when they're about to happen, Well, it's so fun, like, you hear about this. I've had so many conversations with, like, individuals like you, and then, like, 2 years later, it's like happening, It can happen really quickly.
It can.
It's really cool.
Even like the first summer that I worked at that law firm, I wrote my first patent application. It was on a joystick for the old Apple II computer in the 1980s. And so I went home over the holidays, and we went to a computer store. It was back in the 80s when there were very few computer stores, but we went into one there with my dad, and I looked at this box. It shows a joystick. I turned over. It says patent pending. I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's not just me typing words on a page. They're actually selling this and making money in the stores.
Neat.
Wow.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys get the same thing when you go out and talk to startups and stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean,
so
I got to
rewarding.
work with a company that they were a contractor of this guy, and I saw these before they were on anyone. But I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's like so curious. I was like, can I see it? Like, and then sure enough, like within months, you know, because that was massive.
Yeah.
They were out.
So
I was like, "Nice."
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Great, well, thanks. So you guys are located down in Austin?
Yeah, we are. Yep, just right across the street.
1 second away.
Yeah, this seems to be the place to be. I know, I just heard of this new firm up in September of last year, so, but it's just 2 blocks away, so it's,
Which firm are you at?
it's called Reed and Scardino.
Oh yeah, I think I sent the card.
Thank you.
Did
Just
you
one for you.
Okay, great,
Awesome.
thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, I got your card already.
okay.
So you're on
Jenny's
Congress.
plenty.
Yeah, we're just, Third and Congress here, so.
Oh, awesome.
Awesome.
2 blocks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really amazing to, even today I met with somebody who's consumer packaged good invention that just, there's nothing else like that out there. I'm just like, okay, that's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And
No,
then-
I'd love to talk to you more about all that. We actually we have certain strategic partners that are patent attorneys because they know all the innovative companies that are
Sure,
filing patents, so those are really good
great.
folks
And
for
that's,
us to know. Yeah.
that's what I was just thinking of.
So we have
one,
strategic partnerships too, so
Yeah.
we could definitely talk about it, because if you know, companies that are innovative, they're coming to you for patents,
Yeah,
it's, textbook R&D.
right.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even this guy I met with today, I mean, he's just telling me I had to go through all these iterations and all this work to get this thing to work just the way it's supposed to work. And it's like, well, that's probably, when you started talking, I'm like, I should probably get him to talk to you.
And you could say anything I'm billing you, you could capture too.
That's, yeah, when you said.
Yeah,
legal,
you're
my
like
wife's my
free.
opposite
You're
out.
like
That's
free
like-
for him if
yeah.
you introduce
Great,
them to
right?
us.
That's great, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a huge savings, because
Yeah.
I mean, I always, my
It'd
problem
be your
is I
value
like
add.
to just put huge amounts of, detail into patent
Sure.
applications, so they can just
So
kind
they
of
actually
unfold
get
it
them,
over
yeah.
time and pull out new, aspects that they may not have realized were commercially that significant to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the freedom to make the move, but then that
They have
runs
the
up
freedom
the
to
bill,
take
and
up
then
more
it's like,
area.
well, they need something like you to say, let's let
Yeah.
Uncle Sam pay the bill, and then we
Yeah.
can build out this patent application to
Yeah.
the full breadth that it really needs to be to
It-
cover everything.
I'm sure they'd rather pay you and us than Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
We're a lot less
Yeah.
expensive when it comes down to it.
That's what I was thinking when you were, I was like, you guys
Yeah.
have the perfect business model, and that you can either pay us or you can pay the government. It's-
Totally.
Yeah. you just-
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. And finally, it's permanent, so it legitimizes it too.
Yeah.
So many people are like,
No more
You probably
crossing
hear
your
it.
fingers anxiously every December,
uh,
waiting for the legislation to drop.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or people being like, you found the loophole. Or, no, it's
Right.
in the code.
Yeah,
No one wants to read it, but it's there.
yeah.
He read it. He asked
Yeah.
me about section 174.
Oh,
I was
wow.
looking at
He's
Google,
like, I'm an IRC 41 expert now.
4-part test, what's this 4-part test, so you don't.
So people get really hung up on the 4-part test, so it's nice when we can just talk about it
Yeah.
a lot more casually.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the outlier on the curve of.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no,
I-
that's
I-
good.
I gotta tell you, for all the years that I've been doing this, you're the first person that's ever, without any education on the credit from my end, asked me like direct sections of the code.
Well, that was, you were talking about, in your app like TurboTax, when I was,
Yeah.
the first time I tried to use TurboTax in the 1990s, I was sitting there clicking the box, like answering the question, and then I get to the end, it's like, well, these numbers don't work out right, and then I go back, oh, I was remembering the way it was phrased in the Internal Revenue Code, not the
Oh
actual
my gosh,
question
not
they
the
were
way that
asking
they
me.
did it. Wow.
They tried to simplify it for me, and I was thinking,
Yeah, yeah.
right out of the code. So.
Yeah, take that attorney hat off sometime.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
well-
I just do my taxes, I get the Internal Revenue Code out, get the taxes out, and just go straight away, because I just can't think in the simplified terms. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's totally okay.
Fair enough.
Totally okay. Yeah, ours is definitely more qualitative than quantitative,
Yeah.
so
No,
it
that's
makes it a
great.
little bit easier.
That is really
Thank you
cool.
so much. That's just such a
course.
great little turnout. Like, we got to meet so many great people.
Yeah, well, I
Fantastic.
wanted more, but
We'll come back.
number one, it's summer,
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
and summer it's hard to get people.
I think this is a perfect size group, though.
And then we
People feel
And then we
comfortable.
were actually, I was late at getting you guys to speak.
Mhm.
So if I'd been about another week and a half early, I could have had another email blast out there.
I love this size group because people are more inclined to ask questions
Yeah.
throughout too. Because sometimes in larger groups they like don't really want to ask.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's perfect. Yeah.
And noticed that when I was looking out in the audience and hearing them asking questions, I was thinking, yeah, there weren't as many people at some of the meetings, but we made up in quality what we don't have
Well,
in
and that's
quantity.
actually what's been happening.
Yeah.
Because we've had really diverse speakers on different subjects,
Uh-huh.
and the crowd has not been the same at any of them,
Mhm.
but they've been, they're coming for the speaker.
And they're engaged, which
Well,
is really
yeah.
nice.
One of the gentlemen, I already have a meeting scheduled with his boss, like in 2 weeks. He's coming to my office, so that was great.
Oh, I didn't tell you about that commission structure.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's already in writing, calendar invite, it's on there with Peter. And then the other one was funny. I wrote down his company's name because I live on Rainy Street and their company's on Rainy Street,
Mhm.
and they, I guess, have been solicited by a firm, but they said their fees were really high, and I had never heard of the firm. He said it was like Horowitz or something. I've never heard of that. But
Horowitz.
I was like, maybe it's a person. We're starting to see some individuals getting. I don't. He's gonna double check me because I was like, that's really not ringing anything. But
Yeah, our
Yeah.
patent attorney that spoke at the second event that I took, when I took this group over, I know that he got a $20,000 client.
oh wow.
Oh, wow. Do you
Yeah.
take you out for a drink?
We haven't discussed it yet.
Oh gosh, we will have tequila shots ready for
I'm
you
not-
if
I'm
you give
not
us that.
worried.
Just kidding.
We're gonna be friends.
Absolutely. We love talking here, so thank you for having us.
Good.
Yeah,
And
thank you for your comment.
get in touch with us whenever
Yeah,
you've got that.
Go ahead and shoot me an email and we'll see, because if you can make my clients get money from the government to pay me, that works for me. It
There you
doesn't matter
go.
where they get the money from, but the more, that'd be great.
Okay, so if I acquire a company that hasn't done R&D credits, can I go back 2 years for payroll?
Not for payroll, but you can go
Get
back 3 years
pre-acquisition.
for credits.
Okay.
Pre-acquisition credits.
Okay. But I can't get,
You can't get payroll offset.
It's only for eligible, it just passed in 2015 in the PATH Act, so it's only
I got
eligible.
you, so it
Yeah.
wouldn't apply for the years before.
Right, it's not
Right.
Oh, okay.
retroactive.
Yeah.
But in 2 years, if I,
No, so you have to file within that next year.
you do.
So it's a little catch.
Oh, man.
So yeah, for 2016, that's why we were like, whatever,
I
you
was
have
just,
to
I
get
was just looking at
it
some
before the end
incentives
of
to
December.
acquire
Okay.
companies that
Yeah.
have gone away.
Well, depending on, how it's structured, they can still hit your personal income taxes.
Yeah. Well, and
So
that's
it doesn't
I
have
guess
to go against
so
payroll
the other
offset.
question is if I acquire, if one was a LLC and the other was a personal, business, and then I have to change
We've
the.
seen so many strange webs thrown
Have you?
at us.
Oh,
So
really?
just when it happens, let us know.
You just
Because-
switch the entity that you're looking at, you just switch your analysis for that year. It goes back and forth all the
Yeah,
time.
it
There's
just
different
goes back and
rules
forth.
that are.
So we have holding companies, have webs within webs, we have it all. trees.
My father had been, and he's been passed away for a few years, but was head of taxation for Transamerica Corp.
Oh, wow.
So he had been retired for a long time, so, and then my younger brother has been chief financial officer of multiple international phone companies. So, but
Yeah.
conversations I've had with him,
Tax, yeah.
Yeah.
You've heard of WorldCom?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
my brother was chief financial officer of a company that got taken over by WorldCom, and then became part of that group of corrupt CPAs. So, yeah, the answer is my younger brother's not very honest.
Well, regardless, sometimes you hear about these things and you know enough to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
That can happen with people. You see it,
Yeah.
you see it at all levels, but
Well, it costs a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of people a lot of jobs,
yeah, yeah.
so the answer.
So it just, short-term gain is long-term pain. That's what we always say. So it's just good
I
to be
like it.
legitimate from the get-go.
Wow. So we can quote you on that?
You can take it, you can use it. It's my favorite because a lot of people like to cut corners, and when does it ever really work out?
Yeah.
Might be temporary fix, but
Yeah. It's like
put a
on my
Band-Aid on.
personal taxes, I always like to, not to worry too much about some deduction that's like $50. I figured,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
push comes to shove, say, I think I got another 50, but it was like,
Yeah, they're never gonna come after
they
you for that
audited me on
$500.
something that was, it was a very obscure thing that, but it was great to be able to go back and I called up my accountant. I've been using an accountant that just was absolutely, he knew, I mean, he was all over the Internal Revenue Code. And,
Yeah.
but I just handled the audit myself, and it's like, well, here's this, and here's the, it was funny too, because the Internal
This is
Revenue,
my boyfriend. He's just been doing studying while he's here. He's in med school, so he has his
I just thought you
computer.
had a secret admirer.
Yeah, I just have a stalker.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, everyone's Brian.
Hi, pleasure to meet you.
Internal Revenue
He's in med
has-
school. He's
it
visiting us
had
week.
prescribed
Lives in
procedures for
Michigan.
calculating
Oh,
it,
really?
but it had,
Yeah.
so you, I don't
Wait a
think
second,
it's
so
been
you're not
implemented
together?
until, you know, it was.
Together?
It was
Physically.
old, I think it was
No,
like
we're not physically
1984, so
together all
it
the
predated the
time.
1986
Yeah,
tax
so
code.
it's not
So when are you
So,
moving here?
But it was got
As
its,
soon as I can.
got a little asterisk and says,
But he was
this is a
interested in
highly
coming too,
technical,
because, he has
area, you
some
need to
mentors
consult
that
the, you know, this is
yeah,
direction
they're
to the
doctors.
IRS
Tax
auditors.
advisor.
This is direction to the IRS auditors to make their fees, and it's, you need to consult the
Okay.
in-house,
Yeah, so it's been
you know,
really fun.
IRS
We're
attorneys
like
to deal with the
getting him to be
specific
an
highly technical
entrepreneurial
stuff.
doctor.
I
believe it.
The irony
Well, the
was
future,
that,
that's
I made this one-page
so
spreadsheet with like
I haven't
a
worked
dozen
for you
numbers
since
on
I was
it,
20.
because
Wow,
basically
right
the
on.
IRS had all the numbers they needed
Probably
except for
over
one, I think, to
4 years.
do it. And some of the numbers are ones that they'd given me, and then.
6 years young.
Yeah, it's confirming things in the past, and so it came down
You know, I tell
to,
28-year-old girls.
just this one number I needed to get them, which I knew, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I realized the irony was that the number was,
I don't know,
normally
my
they're
dad's
like, they're gonna say, oh,
63,
your deduction
and
needs to
he,
be lower,
like,
and I no, it's like
has
adjusted.
one
Well, this one was like the opposite.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like-
Yeah,
like
but
they-
it is, like, he's
If
like.
they tried to
just
fight it, they were
left us
basically
alone.
fighting
Like,
against themselves. So I just, I put the honest to goodness
it's
number,
funny
but it
too,
was.
yeah.
They really have no grounds to argue with that, because if they do, they'll be giving me.
Well, that's around the corner.
Oh.
Validation of what I put on the return.
Yeah.
So they
You know
just-
what's kind of
Yeah.
scary?
That's what my
How
dad said
not
too. He's like,
knowledgeable
I've made
a lot of
30
that
years
here
of
patients are throughout
It's like
those
crazy,
audits.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Insane.
walked
He's like,
a lot of our
"I
clients
don't
through
know
audits and it's
But
astounding
he was never
to
gonna
me
stop
because,
either, he's like, well,
yeah,
what
we
do
have to
you do?
explain our
Well,
analysis, which
actually,
I'm good
I
with,
was
that's the
just-
point.
Uh-huh.
And
So,
they just don't
my
even
son,
have the baseline
had some
knowledge
struggles in
sometimes
life.
of the mechanics of the
And,
code or the
you know,
calculations
finally,
and
Yeah.
I'm
doing
like, well,
very
I feel in a really good
Yeah.
position right now because I could say anything.
Right.
Not that I would, but it's
Right.
just like,
So, for the
it
third time,
astounds me. And even
uh,
the Internal Revenue
we're gonna
website
college. At this
doesn't
time,
even have the most
literally
recent
something
iteration of
to
Section
something
41 on it.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research the other day because we were trying to figure out the mechanics, because this
Not getting any
payroll
younger.
offset's
I guess
still really
I'll just
new.
open or buy a
So
coffee house.
no other firm is actually offering this
Oh.
service
So-
because it's so new.
That's probably gonna be
So
easier.
here's
So I was
the-
like, doing my research and making sure that everything
For
was
the third time
laid out
after 2
correctly
weeks, he
in
bailed.
the application.
Oh,
And I was
no.
like, I remember in
Now
my
you're saying
head
copy
that
us?
for companies that had only been in existence for less than 3 years, that I just remembered
Yeah.
from
I can tell you I can
one of my
never
dealings
live in
a long time ago,
20,000.
that they could only take
gosh.
50% of their research expenditures for the
What
credit.
is going on?
And I was like, I know that's right.
And,
So then I'm looking in the code and I'm not seeing it anywhere. And I'm like, oh, I guess I just do 30% of the fixed base percentage and then it goes on for the regular credit methodology. I don't know. Because I know I remember this, I don't know where it's coming from. So then I was like, no, like, there's no reason, there's a reason this is sticking out of my head. So then I Googled it and I looked at Cornell's website and they had the most updated version of the code and there was a new iteration that encompassed the companies that just started, that they can only take 6% of
That's
their
world
REs,
trade.
and I compared the two, and it wasn't in the IRC's website, or the IRC on the IRS's website.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
is this serious? Like,
Well, the best one that I've used is
Yeah, we're
the
not-
company
we're
DNA
never
that provides, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's still, this is,
We
you
are
know,
like,
from the
we're
Stone
okay
Age of
with
when
the
they
people
had
doing that, but
paper
we don't
on
participate
bookshelves
in
in
it.
libraries,
We,
but
like,
they had
want-
this,
It's been a
the
while.
DNA tax portfolio, and it was, these
Yeah.
spiral bound notebooks with one in every topic. You could drill down to any question you had about any tax, you know, whether it's corporate tax, partnership tax, individual tax.
Yep.
It was just there in one of those, spiral bound, I ended up
Oh,
buying a CD-ROM of it in the 1990s.
Yeah,
and
that's
so it's,
interesting.
you know, it's a
Yeah.
couple $1,000 for the
For years
CD-ROM,
and
but it's
years.
like, this is gonna
That's why I said, you know.
make sure I don't have any problems with
So
the
I have
IRS, you
400
know, it's
days of
great.
my throwing in a warehouse.
But it was,
Wow.
and then back then I hired, I was living in Los Angeles, so I hired in, the accountant I was talking about in Beverly Hills, and, he was just the most confident accountant I've ever done. He just knew this stuff off the top of his head. He's like, oh, you need to calculate this.
Right.
But they'd prepare a tax return, it's like a book.
all different types of
1040 was like 60 pages
Yeah,
long.
I've seen that, like the water will be actually.
Where it would just say, write a number here, they'd say, oh, see Schedule J on, and
There's the most
So that
convoluted,
was
I
what I was
hate,
working towards.
I'm good at it now, but I hate reading tax returns. I'm like, can you just get to the point? Like, this is ridiculous. It's like, go to this line, go to this line, go to this line, go back to this line.
yeah.
Like all over the place, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And it's constantly evolving. The code is, especially now, with, with regard to like legislation that's being passed down for corporations and individuals, like the tax code is never gonna be the same. So it's just, you constantly have to make sure that you're updating your research, make sure that, you're up to code with what's going on with it, because it's just all over the place.
But that was, even back then, I hired a lawyer who was, there was one aspect that they sent me a letter advising me if, they said, you don't have any duty to report any of this to the IRS, and then I
16 months
happened
later,
to,
$18,000
get an update on some legal stuff and, just a weekly update.
There we go.
Some paragraph that says, oh, there's a law that says you have this, obligation to report this, and there's like a, it was just a draconian penalty, it was, like $200 a day penalty without limit or something if you didn't report.
Do what you love and never work a day in your life.
So I wrote back a letter saying, wouldn't it be correct that I would have a duty under this new law to report, and send it to that
Oh my gosh.
specialist lawyer as well as the partner of the firm that was, I had, it's like, you ought to know that your specialist lawyer who just gave me the advice that told me that I'm not, don't need to do anything, would have cost me $2,200 a day forever, if I listened to her advice, so. It's kind of like, it's not the client's job to keep you guys from committing legal malpractice here, but I just did, so.
Oh my God, what did they do?
They didn't do anything, she just,
Oh,
they
that's
were correct,
I
and
think there's
I
something.
wasn't
I'll see
aware
some
that the law had
problem.
just totally changed in the before I wrote you that, it's like, yeah, well, you kind of better figure that
It's
out.
kind of your responsibility to determine that.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
It was,
Yeah.
my favorite tax,
far as, like,
geek story was my tax professor in law school was, he was going through one lecture, he kept referring to this, subparagraph N or whatever in some provision of the Internal Revenue Code. And I was sitting there looking at my book, and I said, it only goes to M, it doesn't go to N, and I went up after the lecture to him and I said, I don't see an N here, he kept saying, he's like, oh, wait a minute, let me see that, that's, look at that, what, Congress must have taken the N and they must have changed it and consolidated it into M. And
In
now it's just
typical
M.
law school profession fashion.
oh my God.
Now it's M, it's like, oh, thanks for finding it. I'm like,
Detail, yeah.
dude, it's just a different letter, it's,
Yeah, okay,
he's
now,
like,
the
oh,
part
this
that's
is
really
the
good then,
most
so I
amazing.
have to
No,
show you
it's
the
not
picture.
the
This
most
is a
amazing.
little nation.
Yeah, they're
Oh my
they're wrong
goodness.
either, huh?
Yeah, well, it was just, he was just so into
That
science,
is
that
so,
like anything
yeah.
Congress did to the
Too.
past,
That must
was
be-
just change
It's
the
like-
letter here, even if there was
Because
some
it looks
words
like it would be as big as
consolidated,
a
it was
fishbowl,
like a
that too,
huge
when you zoom out and then you
event
see
in
the
his
color.
life.
So
That's
this is what he
hilarious.
does.
I didn't even take tax in law
Wow.
school.
Right on.
I was like, I've been waiting not like the plague, and then here I stand now, so you never know.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering too, how you guys thought you would, I mean, the way she did the presentation, it sounded kind of like, well, we got accountants and attorneys over there, but I figured you guys probably
Like,
had
we did like a mini Austin
So you're
scene,
an attorney
like,
here?
without-
And so we have a couple CPAs on staff that help with the calculations, but really we all do them.
Not large, medium format.
I'm the only attorney on staff right now,
So-
but we actually have one joining us next month, who I used to work with at my old firm, so I'm really excited about that. And we have engineers, and then we have a couple people that have technical writing backgrounds, so they can help us substantiate with the
But I
reports.
also have,
But mainly the FaceTime client interaction, she does it preliminarily to bring the business in, and then once they're in, it's me, essentially, me and Chris, so.
Okay, because you started from an attorney perspective, it's like, what are these guys, is this like practice of law or accounting or both or something?
All of the above. It's a really interesting field. I used to work at a much larger firm with about 300 employees on staff to do these credit calculations, and now
too, right around the
corner.
corner. I like when it's like
Great.
some of them are just engineers. I mean, it's just pending.
Yeah.
Just all over the place. I mean, it's really niche, And it's just it's good to have industry knowledge too when you talk to some of these folks, because we talk to a lot of engineers, and if we can't speak their language, they don't want to talk to us.
Right.
So I trained myself to learn their language, but a lot of people can't do that. So it's just
Yeah.
it helps to have that in a room if you're conducting an interview and you're like like, this is the lawyer, this is the engineer,
An
this is the
executive
technical
order saying
professional,
it's
like,
not.
they're all gonna be working on it.
I don't think he's gonna do it. He's right on
Yeah,
his.
no, that's great to have that
No, but,
level of,
I mean,
you know, people who
right?
actually
Like, I mean,
know,
people actually think he's gonna be
whether
able to
it's hardware or
raise
software
corporate
development,
rate.
or, you know, sort of
It's
know
not-
what goes
it's not
into
gonna
it, so
happen.
that
Oh, yeah, I can
you
tell you
can
what's
know
gonna
from
happen.
an accounting and legal
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah.
what
It's
actually
just-
you need
Yep.
to extract.
We're not
put
gonna
out
have
there.
more
It's really
taxes.
unfortunate
Yep,
too.
it's
It's
great.
just- It's not, it's just gonna be.
Well, thanks so much for coming out.
Thank you, it's great to meet you.
Yeah, I'll
And I'm
send you
excited to
an
hear
email.
more about
And,
your
I think it's
prototype.
gonna get
Yeah,
worse.
yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, I'm meeting with a friend tomorrow.
I was just
We'll
in
see if
DC
we can,
and honestly,
move that
everyone there
along,
was like, we don't
because
do
Austin's
today,
the perfect
like,
place
it's
to
like-
Oh
do
my
stuff
God, the
like that,
perfect
too.
place.
So, yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, let me know, keep in touch.
Great, thank you.
Like, most people's lives are just continuing on, you know, you just do you.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much
much,
for
it's so
coming.
nice to meet you, be in touch soon.
All right,
Yeah.
Have a good one. Pleasure.
you
Good
too.
night.
Well,
See you, Drew. Have a good one.
thanks, good to see you.
Hi.
Jenny, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to
Bryant.
meet you. I've heard a lot of good things about you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you guys did so great tonight. It was phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun getting to
Yeah.
Can I
present
give you a
together
hand with
too.
your stuff in a bit here?
Pardon?
Can I give you a hand with your
Oh,
things?
no, actually,
Covered?
I'm straight down in the parking
Oh,
garage.
all right, just
And,
that.
coming in, it takes 2 votes.
Oh, yeah.
Going out.
everybody's eating there.
Everyone ate all the pizza.
Have a good
They
one.
basically ate all but a couple pieces, and then they drank all but 2 sodas and 2 waters.
That's
Wow.
So, I've actually got it down.
Yeah.
I love it.
Exactly.
Depending on, you know, I actually, it's great, I actually get, anywhere from 75 to 85% attendance,
Yeah,
which for a meetup, by the way, that's,
that's
That's
high.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Well, even the one that, the tech breakfast, I think there's 150 people registered,
Yeah.
but it was not, it
No,
was maybe
I
20,
actually counted, I think it was 48 or
40
something.
people, so not even half.
It would, yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't
so-
even know you could fit that many people in here.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, it used to be, that they used to put seating in here, you can see they have seats. I've been in here when they've had 150.
Oh, wow.
This group used to get 150, and then I took it over. It started 4 years ago, and then the guy that had it before me was traveling too much, and for 6, 8 months, he kind of let it drop, and only did a couple meetings, and then that just kind of, and so I'm working it
So you're
back.
working it back
I'm
up.
wrapping it back up.
Well, I think you're doing an excellent job.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of, oh,
It is hard to in summer,
Yeah.
too. We love
In
summer
this
because
town?
we are like,
Yeah.
extensions all around the corner.
yeah. So by the way, my trick on taxes, by the way, we were talking just a little, is if you look at my tax return, you think I'm a really bad guy that I don't donate.
Uh-huh.
I donate a lot. I've actually, you know what Rotary and the Kiwanis are?
Yeah.
I'm actually both.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I've been president of the Kiwanis group, and I've been,
Yeah.
you know, active in that 30 years on both of them. But I believe I never have written off donations on my tax return. And my dad, who was a tax guy, said, Drew, write it off. And I go, if you give, you give. You don't give it to get it back.
Right, yeah.
So-
It's not for you, it's for them.
Yeah, and so I personally have never, but by the way, it's always good, I've never been audited yet, luckily. But so I can always go back and say, well, you know, I haven't written off any of these donations.
Sure.
There you go, it's in your back pocket.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
get out of here.
Awesome,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you
a
so
good evening.